Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Fire Emblem 3 Houses Only Love Can Hurt Like This Part 1 in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. 11. Unwavering Devotion. Hanuman cleared his throat. Alright, you all have 20 minutes to complete the exam. Remember, there is a back. Now put up your folders. He instructed everyone to do so. Alright, the timer begins now. You may start. After you have completed the assignment, silently raise your hand and I will take your quiz. Take advantage of the silent reading time until the class is finished. Or, you may quietly put your head on your desk. Make sure to fill in the scantron dark. Dmitri sat at the front of the room. He was the last one to be working on his test, which was out of the ordinary for him. He looked stressed about it. Dido was putting his head down at his desk beside Dmitri, watching him take the test. He seemed upset about how long it was taking him to finish. Annette and Mercedes were both silent reading. Dmitri finished right at the end of class, and Hanuman came to take his test. He was grading the tests during the silent reading time and already wrote "See me on Sylvains." Dmitri stood up and grabbed his school bag, looking like he was in a rush to get out of class. His book bag caught on a chair and spilled all over the place, and he looked like he was holding in immense anger as he cleaned them up. Everyone began to walk out of the room, but Dido immediately knelt down and helped him clean up the books. "Your Highness, please let me help," he said, putting them back into his bag. Dmitri didn't say anything until all the books were back in his bag. He sighed and stood up. "Thank you." He quickly rubbed his eyes, then started walking out with Dido. Before Dido could ask what's wrong, he asked, "Dido, are you heading to the dining hall? There's a feast today commemorating Saint Mossel." "No, I am not," he said, shaking his head. "I am going wherever you go," he told him. "And I think you should get back into bed." "Oh, well. I was going to join in on the fun. Plus I'm rather hungry. I snuck in some training at the crack of dawn, and my stomach has been growling ever since." He stayed facing forward. "I'm fine." "Really? Really? Well, if you say so, then I will accompany you to the feast." "Even without being able to taste it, will you enjoy it?" he asked, feeling awkward now that he knew about Dmitri's condition. Dmitri stopped walking. "I have two things that I need you to hear. 1. There is no need to call me Your Highness anymore, call me Dmitri. I'm your friend, and 2, dining is not an issue for me. It's the people with whom I share my meal with that make it worthwhile." Me met Dido's eyes when he said that. "Understood. I understand the second request," he said before continuing to walk again. "But I did notice that you took an awfully long while on your test." He sighed. "We'll work on the first one." When Dido mentioned his test, he looked a little distressed. "To be frank, I was up all night, He leaned closer to Dido and lowered his voice, panicking. He moved his head away. He just didn't want anybody overhearing him. "Not about the test. About, you know what." He walked with his head down, zoning out once they reached the greenhouse. "Oh dear. I hope you know that if you have nights like those, you must wake me up," he said sadly, but stopped as well once they neared the greenhouse. He sort of snapped out of it after a little while and kept walking, acting like he never stopped. "I wouldn't want you to sacrifice your sleep schedule for me, Dido. But it seems like the only time I can sleep soundly is when I have you dash." Ash cut him off. "There you guys are. We were waiting for you to start eating." He happily brought them to the table, where everyone was having a grand time. Dmitri sat down and ate, making sure he had a spot next to Dido. After a long time of chatting and such, he suddenly stood up. "Please, excuse me. I will be back momentarily," he told the group. He headed for the stairs. Dido didn't even try to hide the fact that he was going after Dmitri. He stood up quickly and jogged towards Dmitri, following him up the stairs. "Your Highness." He started climbing the stairs faster after hearing Dido's voice. He was now on 2F, speeding down the hall. He made it to the common room, and then sunk down against the wall with his head in his hands. At this point he gave up on trying to find a place to be alone. He didn't mind Dido's company anyway. If anything, it would probably make him feel better. Your Highness, stop! Dido cried out, kneeling down in front of him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. Please, take a breath. Dmitri didn't look like he was doing very well at all. He couldn't hide the fact that he was crying. For now, it just sounded muffled in his sleeve, but he eventually picked his head up and sobbed. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore, Dido, I just can't. I was trying to enjoy the meal, but the whole time the room was on fire. I saw them, dying over and over and over. I heard their cries of anguish and he choked. It's too much. He squeezed his eyes shut. Dido gasped slightly out of sadness, and pulled Dmitri close to his chest, hugging him tightly. He pet his hair and his back in attempts to make him feel better. He didn't speak, he just let Dmitri get all of his emotions out. Dmitri curled up and cried into Dido for a while. It took him a long time before he was able to calm down. The people downstairs were probably wondering where he was. He lifted his head up and wiped off his eyes once he finally got a hold of himself. I'm sorry you had to see that, he muttered. Dido looked down at him. Do not apologize. This is what I'm here for, and more, he said quietly, still scratching Dmitri's back even though he had calmed down slightly. I'd be humiliated if anyone else saw, he said quietly, taking a deep breath. He leaned back against the wall and tilted his head back. It's getting worse. He looked at Dido. Yet. When I'm with you, it doesn't seem so bad. Dido blinked down at him a few times, then started to lean towards him as if he was going to kiss him, then quickly turned around and faced the other way, sitting beside him. Dmitri stared at him, not really knowing what was going on. After Dido looked away, though, his hand inched toward his, but it wasn't so that they were touching yet. His eyes still had tears in them as he solemnly thought to himself. Your Highness, Dido spoke softly. He paused, then continued, does seeing me bring back those memories? Dmitri's mouth parted a little and he emitted a soft gasp. Dido, no. He turned his head to face him. No, he shook his head. I am always reliving my past, the tragedy of Dusker, it is constantly replaying before my eyes, some days are worse than others. Today is one of those days. He clenched his fists. It fills me with rage, and I try so hard not to lash out in fear that I may hurt someone, or myself, he frowned. I don't know what I would do if I accidentally hurt you, he paused. So no, you don't bring back those memories, you bring me comfort. He quickly wiped his eyes again. I know your people are innocent. I know it. It brings me such happiness to hear you say that. Dmitri, he said quickly. Your Highness, I apologize, but that just doesn't feel right to say your name in such a way. He seemed a little happier when Dido called him by name. I like the sound of it, he said, because when you call me, Your Highness, it feels like you're implying my life means more than yours. He shook his head. We are equals, Dido. That's because it does, Dido said. You saved me. You deserve everything and anything, and I feel as if I cannot give you that. You know I appreciate you. I don't take you for granted. Not ever, he frowned. Maybe I did save you, but that doesn't put my life at greater value. He paused. You saved me too, in a way, and I want to give you something in return. I feel as though you've done so much for me recently, but I haven't done much of anything in return. He looked at him. What can I do? There is nothing I need to ask of you, Dido, he said, putting his hand atop Dmitri's between them. Just continue to maintain our friendship. And I will be happy. Dmitri let Dido cover his hand, suddenly feeling really emotional again. When Dido said that, he felt a nervous wave crash over him, and he found himself struggling to find the right words to say. It looked like he wanted to say something, but couldn't. I apologize if I said something to upset you, Dido replied sadly. If you would like some time alone, be honest. No, not at all. Dmitri shook his head. It's just, on top of all this stress, he couldn't say it. He took another deep breath. It's all right. Take your time, I am here to listen, Dido informed him. He let out a deep breath, staring at the ground in front of him. He just sat there with his mouth slightly open, not getting anywhere with his words. Didu put his hand on Dimitri's shoulder once more. Take a breath and try again. Dimitri was denying everything so hard. He took a deep breath like Didu suggested, his shoulders dropping. When he felt Didu's hand on him, he leaned toward him a little bit. It's unrelated to what I was talking about before, but I've been asking myself if I might be, or if I would ever, he swallowed. I'm having thoughts that I might have feelings for someone. He became nervous and embarrassed right after he said it. His face turned red, and he suddenly felt the need to flee. Didu looked devastated. You do. He said, unable to hide the disappointment in his voice. Well, I am happy for you. I hope everything works out for you too. I understand how being in love with another can make you nervous. I also have one who I would forever and always pledge my life to. You do too. He sounded curious. He sighed. I don't normally talk about things like this, his heart was pounding. I think nervous is an understatement. He noticed how disappointed Didu sounded, then got scared to confide in him. His voice shook. Didu, he had a lump in his throat. Would you consider, he kept pausing, his voice wavering. Would you kiss me? He softly asked. Didu slowly looked at him. Your Highness, he breathed, but didn't hesitate to lean over towards him and kiss him hard on the lips. He wasn't expecting it to happen that fast or even at all, especially from Didu, but he let it happen and kissed him back the best he could. He wasn't so good at it, but that wasn't his concern right now. When they were done, he moved his head away and sat against the wall again, looking straight at the floor with a turbulence written all over his face. Your Highness, I'm so sorry. Didu spoke quickly, staring directly in front of him at the floor. I am so sorry. Dimitri said nothing, maintaining a vacant stare. It was like he didn't hear what Didu said, but after a few more moments, he grabbed Didu's hand and kissed him again. Didu pulled away after a long while, but kept his face close. Your Highness. He said it more as a question than anything. Why? Seeming unsure of himself afterwards, he let go of Didu's hand. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something, but it took him a while to actually get it out. Why? He refused to look at Didu. I don't know. I just felt like maybe. He suddenly looked a little panicked and stood up, putting his head in his hands and looking down. Didu slowly rose to his feet. I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable. Are you okay? He asked, putting a gentle hand on his back. He flinched at Didu's hand, and his voice sounded troubled. No. I made a mistake. Didu, I have to go. He moved away so that he was out of Didu's reach. Don't follow me, that's an order. Do not speak of this to anyone. He pointed at him, then briskly exited the common room. Didu's hand rose to his mouth, trembling slightly. Didu being Didu, he followed orders and let Dimitri leave without him. He slid to the floor once more, remaining in the room alone with nothing but contemplative silence to keep him company. Chapter 12, Chat with Claude. The next day soon arrived. Dimitri entered the dining hall alone, and he sat near Claude. He seemed really off today, and it wasn't his flashbacks or hallucinations making him feel that way. Claude balled up a napkin and lobbed it into Dimitri's lap. Hey. Wanna play some trash ketball later today? He asked, scooting closer so he was directly across from him. Dimitri looked down at the napkin in his lap, then just set it aside. He never refused a game of trash ketball with Claude. It was their fun tradition that they left Edelgard out of on purpose. No, he vacantly said. What? Claude was shocked and taken aback and startled. Seriously? He leaned forward. Is something going on? He kept his voice low. Talk to me. Dimitri grit his teeth and spoke under his breath to Claude, not wanting people to overhear him asking if anything was wrong. I don't want to talk about it. Okay geez, you just look a little crazy right now, that's all. Hey, and where's Didu? Isn't he usually hanging on your shoulder? Claude asked. I don't want to sit with Didu today, he said, his voice void of emotion. He stared down at his plate, which was full. Okay, sorry, he said, slowly backing away and sitting back down on the bench. Didu was sitting a few tables in front of them, not eating his meal. Dmitri put his hand on his cheek as he sat, staring at Dudu. He made sure to sit behind Dudu so that he wouldn't be able to catch him staring. He let out a wistful sigh, looking back at Claude. Do you ever feel like you're not yourself? Or, do you ever wish you could rewind time, to undo things you wish you hadn't done? Gonna be honest here, no, not really. He shook his head. I mean, yeah, to some extent, but everything's gotta happen for a reason. He told Dmitri. I mean, I usually wish I could rewind time to live special moments over again. Like just a few days ago, Byleth and I rode my wyvern into the fields just outside Garagmok and picked flowers and stuff, and I wish I could relive it, he explained. But I never think of going back to undo things. This is different. I don't want to go back and relive my past. He gripped his napkin tightly. My past doesn't involve scenic wyvern rides or joyful flower picking or love of any sort. He paused, suddenly finding it hard to talk again. I want to rewind time and take back something I said. Something I did. I am full of regret. He looked at Claude, frowning. There must be times when you feel the same. Well, yeah, I guess so, but what's this instance you're talking about? Maybe there's something we can figure out together to fix this. I don't feel comfortable sharing my dilemma, he admitted. Whoever wants to share about something they regret? He asked. I'm just confused, Claude. I don't think I've ever been more confused about something in a long time. I don't know who I am. I'm losing my grip on myself. I feel myself slipping away. Whoa, wait, seriously. He stood up and moved around the table to Dmitri. Come and stand up, he said, grabbing his arm and slowly pulling him to his feet. Come with me, okay? He stood up with Claude, but pulled his arm away. Don't make a big deal out of it. Please. He started walking, making a subtle motion for Claude to follow. While doing so, he walked past Dudu's table, not even looking at him. He followed Claude to wherever he was headed. Claude brought him to his own bedroom and closed the door behind them. My lips are sealed, okay? Promise. Now what's got you down? He stood in the middle of Claude's room, doing the little emote where they put their hand on their head like they're thinking or maybe distressed. He sighed. Claude, you're my good friend and all, but I'm not so sure telling you or anyone is a good idea. Hey, you better not be doubting me. He pointed to his head. I have so many secrets locked up in here, I'm not gonna tell anyone anything that you don't want to be shared. Look, he sighed, you're struggling. But you shouldn't have to struggle alone. Let me be there for you, your anchor, if you will. He let Claude's words sink in, looking down at his feet before having the courage to speak. All right. I trust you. He looked up at Claude, seeming troubled. Last night, at the feast, I had some flashbacks of the tragedy. I left before I could let it show that I was feeling distressed. But after I left, Dudu followed me. He comforted me. He let me properly expel my emotions. While I appreciate that, he paused, I may have been feeling a bit too emotional. He took a deep breath. In that moment of weakness, he couldn't look Claude in the eyes for this portion of the story. We kissed. And, then I felt embarrassed and left. He looked back at Claude. I wish I hadn't done that, Claude. He had a conflicted expression on his face. To Dmitri's surprise, Claude smiled. Really? He raised an eyebrow. Why do you regret it? Do you even have a reason to regret it? He asked curiously, putting his hand on his chin. He wasn't expecting Claude to smile, but he didn't lighten up at all. Well, you see. I don't know if I liked it, he said. I don't think I'd ever want to do it again, but I don't want to hurt Dudu's feelings. Claude dropped his arms to his sides. He blinked at Dmitri for a few seconds before striding forward and giving him a short kiss, then backing away. Okay, what about that? Hate it? Like it? Love it. He gasped a little and backed up, covering his mouth for a little bit. Flustered, he exclaimed, Claude. He slowly dropped his arm back down, then stared at him. That wasn't Dash. I wasn't, you can't just. He didn't answer Claude's question until he had a few moments to think. I'm not sure how I felt about it. I don't think I liked it. Besides, it was you. It was different. Claude chuckled. Oh come on, I'm a great kisser, he said, not even seeming embarrassed in the slightest. Anyways, now you have your answer. You're just not into guys and that's fine. He shrugged his shoulders. Explain that to Didu. He'll understand. He loves you way too much to disregard your feelings. No, Claude, that's the problem. He loves me. And, if I can't return those feelings, then he's going to be devastated. He does so much for me that it feels wrong not to like him back that way. He sat on the bed, sadly. Hey, you shouldn't feel forced to like someone, he said, sitting beside Dmitri on the bed. You're just a lovable guy. He sighed before mumbling, gotta admit this sooner or later. He continued, I was pretty smitten with you when we first met. He paused. Obviously I've moved on since then, but I do know. I can see where Didu is coming from. You're kind, and most of all you're kind to him. He doesn't get that from anybody, really. What? With me? Oh come now, he shook his head. I didn't even notice. Am I really that oblivious? But then again, you're adept at hiding things. Feelings included. I wish I was the same way. He let out a sigh. I suppose you're right. I do treat him well compared to almost anyone. He let out a short sigh. I'm starting to wonder, Claude. Why don't I reach out to you more often? You're really helping me sort through this. I mean that. You can come to me anytime, he said with a genuine smile. And not just for trash ball. He nudged his shoulder in a playful manner. But if I know anything for sure, it's that you're gonna be just fine, okay? Just go and have a chat with Didu after this. Thank you, he said, I will. I promise. He managed a small smile when Claude nudged him, then started for the door. He turned around. I'm sorry things didn't work out with us. I mean, just thinking about what you said to me earlier. The whole liking me thing. Oh nah, I'm perfectly happy with the way things are now. And besides you're not into guys, he said, standing up. I was just thinking, perhaps if I had this dilemma sooner, he trailed off. No, never mind. He gave Claude one last look. Take care, please. And I'm looking forward to playing trash ball with you once I'm feeling back up to speed. After that, he exited. He searched for Didu, prepared to have a chat with him like Claude suggested. Didu was in the greenhouse, as usual, planting a new kind of flower. Dmitri knew he was usually found around the greenhouse, so he checked there first. Sure enough, he spotted him right away. He took a deep breath to compose himself before gaining the courage to walk over. He steadily made his way to Didu, standing a bit off to the side. Hello. Didu looked up at him for a moment, nodded a small hello, and then focused back on his plants. Dmitri felt very awkward. He cleared his throat, a nervous habit. I'm here to talk with you. I'm sure you've been anticipating this. Yes. Trust me, I've received your message loud and clear. He spoke calmly. I'll forget everything that happened between us. What? What do you mean, Didu? I didn't say anything since then, did I? He froze, wondering if he was missing something. No. You didn't. But I could tell how upset you were after we shared a kiss. You shouted. You ran off. It couldn't have meant anything good. I'm sorry. I'm afraid my emotions were unrestrained last night. I shouldn't have put you through that, please forgive me. He sounded really sad. You are forgiven, of course. I hold no grudge against the man who saved my life. Didu replied, still focusing on his plants. I must have hurt you, no. He said, aren't you feeling the least bit hurt? Don't you feel betrayed? My behavior was unacceptable. I feel awful. There's no way this should be hurting me more than it is hurting you, yet you seem unaffected. I have no need to show my emotions. He hesitated before telling Dmitri, all that matters is that your highness is happy. He suddenly seemed a little angry. You know what? No. He walked a little closer. That's not how things should be, Didu. That is not all that matters. You matter too, and I know that you harbor great emotion, just like a normal person ought. And do you know how I know that? He paused. Because I could feel it last night when we kissed, okay? That was the most emotion I have ever seen from you, so you have to be feeling something. For once, don't give in to your relentless devotion to me. Tell me how you feel. Okay. If I must. He rose to his feet and turned to face him. I love you, Your Highness. More than myself. More than anything else on this earth. Knowing those feelings aren't reciprocated tears my soul in half. But I find peace in the idea that if you were meant to love someone else, that maybe, somehow, I will be able to love someone else as well. He finished doubtfully. It felt like someone just stabbed Dmitri through the heart. He blinked a few times, registering his words. Thank you for being honest. Really, he nodded, and then it got silent for a while. He walked a little closer to Didu. I needed to hear that. And the truth hurts both of us, I know it. Please don't say it out loud, Your Highness. Didu winced, looking down at Dmitri. I understand. Anyway. I think I should be going now. I just needed to speak with you. To get things off my chest and to let you know the truth. He took a deep breath. I shall see you around, Didu. He backed up, then left, full of remorse. Didu had never felt the sting of rejection like this. He spent a short amount of time in the greenhouse before exiting and walking to his room, alone. Chapter 13, False Accusations. That evening, Raphael was able to leave the hospital. He stood up and flexed. All right. Bring on the meats. He laughed, then headed down to the dining hall. Ignatz was down there, sitting at a table. Hey. Hey Raphael, he called, waving him over. There was a huge plate of meat next to him. Raphael saw the big platter and sat down right in front of it. That for me. He pointed and gawked down at it. I've been dying to get back in here and bulk up. Think I lost some of my muscle mass when I was bedridden? Definitely not. Ignatz said with a small chuckle. Ah, it's so nice to have you back. He said, picking a small potato off his own plate. It's nice to be back. He did the little fist pump emote, then grabbed a turkey leg and ripped into it. So good. He did the Matt Stoney technique when you push the bone down to get the meat off, then just kinda slurp it up. Ignatz smiled. You know, I think that's the one thing I didn't miss. He joked, continuing to eat his dinner. So what? He said with his mouth full, chowing down. Did I miss anything while I was stuck in bed? He wiped off his mouth with a napkin. Ha. I'm drooling. I can't help it, this food is amazing. No. Nothing that I haven't told you, but I was almost with you all the time, so, yeah. You didn't miss much. That whole murder thing was scary though, really. If I wasn't hurt I would have been so ready to protect you. He put his bare bone down and started smacking his lips. Yes I'm sure you would, Ignatz said with a small nod. It's nice to know there are people like you out there willing to do so much for weak people like me. Yeah. That's like, wait. Did you just call yourself weak? Ignatz. Yeah, I have brute strength, but you have like, art strength. If that makes any sense. Probably not. But like, you show powerful messages through your art. I mean, I don't get it most of the time, but it's still there, isn't it? Some sort of weird red rash was forming on his neck and he was itching a lot. Oh. Well, that's so sweet of you to say. I like to think that he stopped, leaning over the table to look at his neck. Rafe? Is your neck okay? He asked. My neck? Yeah, why wouldn't it be? Did my neck lose some muscle mass? Better not have. He frowned. But does the air in here feel sort of thick to you? He wheezed. Oh no Raphael, I don't think you're completely healed yet, hurry. Stand. We need to get you back to the infirmary. He crawled over the table and hopped over to his friend's side. Come on. But I was feeling fine a second ago. It sounded like he was straining to talk, but then his throat closed up and he started having immense trouble breathing. He pulled Raphael by his arm to the infirmary, screaming for a healer or someone to help as they stumbled out of the mess hall. Raphael sat on his old bed, just focusing on trying to breathe. Manuela rushed into the room. "What's going on?" She spotted Raphael and then looked at Ignatz. "What's wrong now? Didn't he just leave?" She went to check Raphael, then said, "It's an allergic reaction." "Ignatz, toss me that." She pointed to a small needle-looking thing called an AP pen that was laying on a desk. "Oh, this is called an AP pen," Ignatz said, grabbing it and running over. "What is he allergic to?" "Beats me. Must be something he ate." She took it and jabbed Raphael's leg with it. It took a little while, but it worked, and Raphael was doing better. Raphael looked extremely confused. "What was that about?" "I'm not allergic to anything. I just had a couple turkey legs. I eat those all the time." "You've either developed an allergy or someone tried to poison you." Again, Manuela replied. "No way, you can't be allergic to meat." "That's your favorite food," Ignatz exclaimed. "But, who would try to?" "Ah. Wait. The murderer!" Ignatz shouted. "Where?" Raphael stood up even though he was woozy. "I'll beat them up so bad their ancestors'll feel it." He looked around. He didn't mean they're here now. He meant there's a possibility that someone here just attempted to kill you, which is pretty bad. "I should report this to the Archbishop. Make sure you rest, Raphael." Manuela left. Raphael frowned. "I just wanna be better, and I don't wanna die. 'Cause that means I won't be there to protect my best friend, or my little sis and my grandpa." "Hey, don't talk like that," Ignatz said, shaking his head. "But I'm really nervous that someone here is out to get you." "That time was unlucky." "The second time definitely wasn't just bad luck," Raphael said. "We really have to find out who's doing this before someone else ends up hurt. Or worse." "I'm so scared," Ignatz said sadly. "I feel like nowhere here is safe any longer. We have to be cautious. Look, if I can survive deadly poison and getting stabbed through the stomach, I can get through this. And you will too. We just gotta watch each other's backs, yeah." "Yeah, we can do that," he said quietly. "Will you sleep in my room tonight?" Ignatz asked. "Unless you'd rather stay in the infirmary. I'm sick of this place. If you wanna have a sleepover, I'm all for it. It might be best to retire early tonight, anyway. Just in case." He stood up. "See? Look how fast I bounced back. I'm stronger than ever." "Okay," Ignatz said with a small sigh, "I'm still really worried about you," he said as they began walking towards the dorms. "I wonder why anyone would want to do something like this to someone. I mean, what fun is senseless murder?" "Beats me." Raphael shrugged. "I don't know," Ignatz pondered. "And why were you the only one attacked?" he asked nervously. I think last time when I was stabbed it was just a fluke. We weren't even at school when that happened. I do wonder why me, though. Killin' me will do nothing but make my friends and family sad." He frowned. "Oh, I would be so sad," Ignatz told him with a frown as they walked into his room. "Let's play checkers." They played checkers. Raphael didn't know the rules of checkers. He just liked to make the pieces jump around the board and such. Meanwhile, the doors to the greenhouse were pushed open. There were some soldiers there looking for Didu. Didu was in there, as he usually was at this time of day. He stood up, looking to the entrance. "Oh. May I help you?" The soldiers walked up to him. "A student was poisoned during dinner today. The meal was observed and there were toxic herbs used as seasoning. From what observations conclude, you spend a lot of time gardening and in the kitchen, all evidence points to you." Didu gave them a look of suspicion. "You think I would poison a fellow student?" "It was not me," he said. "It had to have been you." The soldiers closed in on him. "There's nobody else here who would do such a thing. You know what you did to the kingdom 4 years ago. This is nothing more than an extension of your plan to bring havoc to Firgus. I know you will not believe me if I deny it." He felt absolutely helpless. "But it was not me. I would never do such a thing." "You deny it, yet you're the one behind the tragedy of Dusker." Things don't look too good for you, boy. They went to seize him, but then the doors opened and they looked behind to see who was there. Ash stood in the doorway, looking nervous. He spoke up. Stop. Stop what you are doing. Right. Now. He didn't sound very powerful, but he wanted to stick up for Didu. Stop it with the prejudice, and you have the audacity to call yourselves true knights. Didu is innocent, and you know it. He stepped forward. If His Highness was here right now, I'm sure he'd be very, very cross. And I am using that term in place of probably much worse. The knights stopped to listen, but didn't seem fazed. You're just a commoner. And if you're sticking up for him, you must be on his side, which is the incorrect side. One of the knights went for Ash. Stop. Didu shouted. It was me. I confess. He yelled. It was me. He looked at Ash courageously. Do not hurt him. Ash's eyes widened as Didu protected him, his jaw dropping. Didu, he quietly said, backing away. No, he knew Didu was just stepping in to stop them from hurting him, but he was obviously frightened of what the guards might do. Didu, they'll harm you. The guards grabbed Didu by the arms to restrain him. Just as we thought. Let's bring him to the cells. They started dragging Didu away. Ash stood by the doors. No. You can't. You. He's a criminal. Are you really going to take the side of a murderer? Intimidated, Ash backed away and had no choice but to let them pass. He started sprinting away to tell Dimitri what was happening, but on his way, he tripped over some steps and fell over, frantically scrambling to get up. Didu didn't resist, he just let them brutally drag him out of the greenhouse. He twisted around once to look at Ash, but was dragged forwards again before he had the chance to say anything. The guards threw Didu in a cell below the monastery, and then went up to tell Ria about what had just conspired. Ash sat up and looked in the direction Didu went, his eyes sad. He reached out, then dropped his hand before trying to stand. He rose to his feet, but his knee was scraped really bad. He noticed that it was gushing blood, then curled up and started whimpering. What the Desh Hilda was passing by. Ash. She knelt beside him. Are you all right? What happened? She helped him sit up. He let Hilda help him, sniffling as he hugged himself. Oh Hilda. I tried to stop them but I couldn't. He got a hold of himself. They took Didu away, they're going to kill him. He wiped his face off. Someone poisoned Raphael at dinner today. They accused Didu, and I tried to stop them. Didu confessed but I know he would never do such a thing. Where's Prince Dimitri? We have to tell him he can put an end to this misunderstanding. Ash slow down. Hilda said with a small frown. First things first, we need to get you healed up. Wait right here, okay? She spun around and ran towards the dorms. She was gone for a bit, but returned with Marianne, who helped heal Ash's knee. Hilda helped him to his feet. Better? She asked. Better. He stood up once he was healed, brushing himself off. Do either of you know where His Highness is? We have to act fast. I don't know how much time Didu has. He looked around, not knowing which way to go. I don't, Hilda said with a frown. Marianne chimed in, I'm sorry, I don't know where he is. But I do know where Claude is. Follow me. She quickly led the way to the training area, where Claude was shooting arrows at a hole-ridden target. Ash followed, quickly passing through the huge gate that led to the training area. He ran inside and found Claude straight away. Hey, this is urgent. I am sorry to be speaking so informally to you, since you're royalty and all, but we have a big problem. It's Didu, he explained the situation to Claude, trying to stay calm and composed, but it was hard. We can't find His Highness anywhere, so we thought coming to you would be the next best thing. Oh wow, okay, that's a lot to take in, Claude said quickly, putting away his training bow. I think I know where he might be. Come on. He led the group to a few places to check: the mess hall, the goddess tower, the church, and his room. Ash followed Claude wherever he went. Dimitri happened to be in his room at the moment. He answered the door, looking concerned when he saw the state of the group. What's going on here? He calmly asked. Ash explained the whole thing. Dmitri immediately shoved through the group and started storming down the hall of the dormitory. Ash jogged behind him. "Why, Your Majesty? I know that it's wrong for you to take orders from me, but please wait." He couldn't stop Dmitri. "Dmitri, hey!" Claude called, grabbing him by the arm in an attempt to stop him. "Would you listen to Ash for a second? You can't be reckless at a time like this. I'm going to break him out." "I'm sick of people refusing to treat him as a human being," Dmitri said, not stopping. "He doesn't deserve this. Not now, not ever." He pulled Claude aside by the arm and spoke to him in a low voice. "I owe him, after what just happened, and I'm going to bust him out of there before they can do anything to hurt him." "Okay, I get that, I do," he assured him. "But will they believe us? I mean, the guy literally confessed to attempted murder. They have to believe us. Or we don't give them a chance to believe us and we just go down there and break him out ourselves." Dmitri frowned. "They won't believe him unless he tells them what they want to hear." "Okay. All right then. Who's with us?" Claude asked, looking back at their little group. Hilda shook her head. "With all due respect, I don't think I want to get caught up in something like this. If anything fails, then you come and get me." Ash looked nervous, but he stepped forward. "I want to save Didu. I truly do. But I don't want to rebel against the church." He seemed conflicted. What would a true knight do in a situation like this? No just follower of Ciro's would mistreat a person as kind-hearted as Didu, Dmitri said. "What they are doing contrasts my values. Hilda, you're not required to come along, but if we need anything, we'll let you know." "Thanks," she said with a small nod. Marianne stuck by her side. Claude made eye contact with Dmitri. "Well, if that's that, let's head down there. I'm with you. We have no time to waste." Dmitri turned around and started running as fast as he could. Ash ran after him. "I'm coming too," he exclaimed, keeping up. "Do either of you know the way into the dungeons? Are students even allowed down there?" "Yeah, I've been down there before," Claude said. "They're right below the church. Come on." He led them down a stairway, down another hall, and down another dark stairway towards the dungeons. Dmitri grabbed a torch from the wall to illuminate the darkness as they descended. He said, "Ash." There was no answer. He looked around, but Ash wasn't anywhere to be found. "We lost Ash." Dmitri shook his head. "Where is he?" "Oh geez. I didn't even realize," Claude said. "What do you think happened? Should we backtrack?" "Track back? There's no time to track back, we have a voice called from down the steps. Who's there?" The sound of footsteps drew nearer. Claude gasped and blew out the torch, silently shuffling into a cell with Dmitri. He held his breath. Dmitri would have commended Claude for his quick thinking, but kept his mouth shut in order to conceal their position. The guard started walking past, saying, "I know someone's down here. Show yourself." He held a lantern, walking right past the cell Claude and Dmitri were in. It seemed like he didn't see them, but he turned around at the last second. "What are you both doing down here? I understand you're both royalty and sometimes earn special privileges, but this place is forbidden for students to enter." "Oh, Claude said, stepping out of the cell. "Sorry. We were playing hide and seek with some of the other students." He quickly whipped up a lie. "Hide and seek? How am I supposed to believe that?" the guard asked. "You're both what, 17? Too old for childish games, if you ask me. I'm going to have to escort you out." He walked forward to bring them along, but Dmitri suddenly lunged forward and punched him, knocking him out. He fell on the ground with a clatter because of his armor. Claude gasped very exaggeratedly. "That was a little much, don't you think?" he asked. "Never mind, we gotta find Didu." "No." Dmitri stooped down and grabbed the lantern. "This guard is holding Didu captive for a crime he didn't commit. He deserved it." He started walking until he finally made it to Didu's cell. He ran toward the bars so that he was holding onto them, looking inside. "Didu? Didu?" Didu slowly turned to face him. "Why, Your Highness? He slowly walked towards the bars. What are you doing here? Saving you. Ash told me what happened. He looked behind him, then back at Didu. I don't know where Ash went, but he was the one who alerted me. He looked at the lock, then at Didu, sadly. Why would you confess to a crime when you're innocent? They're going to execute you, his voice shook. They were going to hurt Ash. I was not going to allow that, he said with a small frown. I do not want to die, he said sadly. I really don't. Please help me, Your Highness. I don't know how to get you out of here. The door's locked. Ash was going to pick the lock, but we can't find him anywhere. He turned to Claude. Does the guard have a keyring on him? Claude patted down the unconscious guard. Nope. No keyring here, he replied. Sorry, he came back over. Dimitri pounded the cell with his fist. Damn, how are we supposed to get this thing open? He shifted over to the lock and jostled it. He got rougher and rougher with it until he was full on trying to yank it off and break it, but it was obviously indestructible by physical means. Claude put a hand on Dimitri's shoulder and pulled him back. Okay, that's definitely not gonna work, he said. Didu shook his head. What if you guys find the real murderer? He suggested. But what if we can't find the real murderer before they do anything bad to you? Dimitri said, I don't want us to be too late. He looked at the lock. Claude, he turned around, go to Mercedes' room and grab a needle. She has plenty, she sews. I can stand guard in here until you get back. Really? Okay. Do you think that will work? Claude asked. You know what, enough wasting time, be right back. He exited the dungeon. Dimitri watched him go, then turned back to Didu. We'll get you out. You have my word. He reached his hand through the bars like he wanted Didu to take it. Didu reached for his hand but hesitated at the last moment and stepped back slightly instead. Dimitri frowned, leaving his hand there, but took it away when Didu stepped back. He held onto the bars and looked through instead. I owe you yet another apology. No. You do not owe me a thing. I am just surprised that you came to rescue me, he said truthfully. I'm grateful. Surprised? You're surprised that I, of all people, would come to your rescue? Didu, I'm failing to understand your lack of faith in me. Just because we had a misunderstanding doesn't change the way I feel about you. When I heard you were going to be sent to death, I nearly lost control of myself, he admitted. Right. I'm sorry, Your Highness, Didu said. I do not want my life to end today, he said again. I'm scared. I'm so scared. He was trying to keep his voice steady. Nor do I. It's okay to be scared, Didu. I can't believe you confessed to something you didn't do. I know it wasn't you, there was no way. He shook his head. I'm just as scared for your safety as you are for yourself. Please know that. No. I didn't do it. He said, but again, better me than a fellow student. Almost all the soldiers here think it was my doing already. I was unable to convince them otherwise, he said. Of course you weren't able to persuade them. They'd never believe you, not after what happened in Dusker. But I know you're innocent and I will never stop pleading for your case, Didu. Never. It's hard to change people's minds, but I'm going to try as hard as I can. Thank you. I cannot thank you enough. Look at you saving my life for a second time, he said with a small frown. I do not deserve this. And I'd save it a third if I had to. And a fourth, and a fifth, and well, you get where this is going. The point is, Didu, that I will always be here for you. He stared at him intently, trying to meet his eyes. He was really hoping Claude would be back soon. Up on the main level, Ash's school bag was lying near the chapel. Mercedes was in the chapel at the time, and she was the one who picked up Ash's school bag. She looked around, wondering if he was near. There were a few specks of blood leading from Ash's bag to the well that was on the side of the chapel. The blood trail stopped when it got to the well. Mercedes let out a small gasp as she followed the trail. Ash. She called out to him, fear settling like ice in her stomach. Ash was curled up at the bottom of the well. He was whimpering and holding his leg, which had a sharp metal scrap sticking out of it like he had gotten stabbed. He looked up at Mercedes and weakly called up to her. "Help me please." Mercedes screamed, "Ash! Oh dear, stay right there." She tried to heal him, but didn't have enough range. She tossed the well rope and bucket down, gently lowering it beside him. "Can you stand or sit on the pail?" she asked him. Ash reached for the pail, letting out a sharp cry when he tried to move. "Ah, oh ow ow. It's really deep in there, it's hard to move." He grabbed the rope attached to the bucket and wrapped his legs the best he could around it, but any movement sent excruciating pain up his leg. "Can you pull me up?" he asked, pain lacing his voice. Mercedes yanked the rope and very slowly raised Ash out of the well. Once he was closer to the top, she was able to use her healing magic on him to relieve him to some extent. She continued to pull until he could clamber out. Ash was thankful for the relief, but it wasn't a full heal, so he was still in pain. Once he was at the top, he made sure to step out with his good leg first, and then collapsed in front of Mercedes. He strained to speak. "The killer. I think the killer got me. But I escaped by hiding down here," he groaned. "I didn't get a good look at them, but they were wearing all black and had their hood up. Whoever it was tried to attack me, but I fell down the well end. I landed on this metal scrap someone threw down here." He was holding back tears very well. "Oh Ash, please calm down." Mercedes knelt beside him. She slowly pulled the scrap from his thigh and healed his remaining injuries as best as she could. "You didn't see their face?" she asked him. Ash braced himself, then yelped when she pulled out the metal. It was a pretty big piece, and after it was out, his thigh started bleeding profusely. Mercedes healed it pretty good, but the damage was still irreversible. He said, "No. I didn't see a face of any sort. But it wasn't Didu, this person wasn't muscular, by the looks of things. Didu was accused and locked up for these crimes, and he's not even the behind it. How could he have attacked me if he's in a cell? We have to let the soldiers know. Oh dear. Come with me. We need to go alert someone." "Can you walk?" she asked sadly. Ash stood up and grabbed onto her. He tried walking, but was limping terribly. "I can try, maybe one of the higher UPS is in the chapel. Did you see anyone there? Perhaps Lady Rhea or maybe Seath." "I did see Seath," Mercedes said, slinging his arm around her shoulder to support him as best as she could. Ash limped along, scanning the chapel for Seath. Seath was standing in front of the church, praying. Mercedes called out to Seath, waving him over. Seath marched over immediately, seeing that Ash was wounded. "What in the... What's going on, Ash?" "Mercedes? What happened?" He observed Ash's leg while Ash told the whole story of what happened to Didu for the third time. Seath looked appalled. "Members of the church are conducting this? Why, it's about time we removed these corrupt individuals from our faction. I will have them terminated. In the meantime, head to the infirmary." "Okay. Thank you, Seath." Mercedes bowed to him before rushing Ash to the infirmary. It took him a while, but Claude eventually came back down to the dungeons. "Hey, I'm back. I brought a few pics." "Didu, I truly do." Dimitri stopped talking when he heard Claude whipping around. "Oh, you're back? You found some? Good. I'm afraid I might damage the needles if I try to do this on my own. Can you pick the lock?" A guard came up behind Claude and held out his hand. "Give me the picks." Claude looked at the guard and immediately started picking the locks, acting like he'd be able to pick it in time. It was kinda really funny. "What do you think you're doing?" The guard pulled Claude away from the door by his shoulder. Dimitri barged between them and started walking toward the soldier to get him to back up and buy Claude time. The guard pushed him. Dimitri stumbled back, looking back at Claude. "Hurry." A group of guards came down and pulled Claude away from the door while a few surrounded Dimitri. Dimitri struggled as two guards held his arms back. "Why won't you believe us? Let us go. Let Didu out of there, he's innocent." He eventually broke free, then grabbed the lantern and held it out in front of him. One of the guards approached him and he swung the lantern at him, but missed. Didu watched from inside the cell, pulling at the gate every so often. Claude dropped the needles. "Fuck!" he screamed, I almost had it. Would you get your hands off us? We're royalty. He shouted. Watch your language. We're in the monastery, a guard said to him. Claude twisted around to glare at the guard who told him to watch his language. Fuck shit ass dick fuck, he yelled. Seath entered at the exact moment Claude shouted that. He looked highly offended to hear such language in a holy place. He stepped forward. Who? He saw Claude and looked at him, confused, but he was more concerned about the hostage situation. I command you, Knights of Syros, to unhand them at once. What compelled you to lay a hand on them? Or the innocent student you are holding captive? He had all the keys to everywhere, so he unlocked Didu and sent the corrupt guards up to Lady Rhea. He looked at the three students. Are you all right? Dimitri nodded, hanging up the lantern. Yes. But it was rather unfortunate that we were treated with such disrespect. He looked at Didu, then walked over to him. Didu, most of all, didn't deserve this. Didu walked out of the cell and immediately pulled Dimitri into a tight hug. Dimitri was actually going to do the same, so he accepted it. He hugged Didu tightly and buried his face in his shoulder. I'm so glad you're okay. I'm not going to let this happen again. I refuse. He nestled his head against Didu. Seath took the guards up. He would talk to Claude and Dimitri later. The guards and Ash were more concerning to him. Claude awkwardly stood behind them while they hugged. After a while, he scooted himself out of the dungeon. Didu pushed away slightly. Thank you, again. I cannot say that enough. There's no need to thank me, but you're welcome. He looked at him sincerely. Do me a favor. Never risk your life like that again, do you hear me? He looked up at Didu, his face inches away. If you die, I'll be a complete wreck. I swear, Didu, I'll lose it. Didu was blushing, but it was too dark in the dungeons to see it. Oh, of course. I'm not planning on leaving you anytime soon. Good. He was still looking up at him probably for a bit too long, but then he backed away. We should be getting back up. Do you need anything? Company, perhaps. You've done that for me, so I just figured. Didu nodded. It would be appreciated, he said, gently grabbing Dimitri's hand. He began to lead the way up the stairs, and released his hand before they arrived on the surface. He let Didu hold his hand until they made it up, but once they were on the surface again, he walked with his hands behind his back like he didn't want to hold hands anymore. Didu entered his room and closed the door behind them. He sat down on the bed. You are not required to stay with me. I want to. He pulled up a chair. You've dealt with my nonsense countless times and have taken care of me on many occasions, often throughout the night. So now I am going to do the same for you. He leaned back and crossed his arms. I want you to feel protected after being persecuted. And I want to make up for hurting your feelings. So, allow me to be there for you. Please. He gazed lovingly at Dimitri as he lay on his side, cuddled in the blankets. I know you don't want to hear it, but I love you dearly, Your Highness, he said, just before closing his eyes. Dimitri frowned, but it wasn't because he didn't want to hear Didu say he loved him. He didn't really know what made him frown. His response was delayed, but he still said it back. I love you too, Didu. Didu smiled, and quickly turned his head, embarrassed for some reason that Dimitri would have seen him smile. A few hours passed, and Didu woke up in the middle of the night. He sat up, looking to see if Dimitri was still there. Dimitri was still in the chair like he said he would be. He didn't notice that Didu had woken up. He was just staring blankly down at the ground like he was sleeping with his eyes open. He looked exhausted, but was still awake. Your Highness. He spoke quietly. I apologize if I woke you. And I know it is childish, but I had a nightmare. Dimitri slowly looked over, and his voice sounded extremely tired when he spoke. A bad dream. I'm familiar with the occurrence. He rubbed his eyes. My life is just one waking nightmare. He reached out to Didu with his arm. What will help you? Will it help to explain your dream? Or shall I distract you from the thought? He swayed a bit. Didu was silent for a moment before scooching over slightly and grabbing Dimitri's arm. He pulled him down onto the bed. "Will you lay here?" he asked. He seemed to wake up a bit more when Dedu pulled him over. He resisted. He looked around, though they were alone. I don't know if this is something I am comfortable with at this moment, Dedu." He frowned, but he didn't move from the spot. "My apologies," Dedu said. "I just find great comfort in you." He said, "You may leave. I'm sorry for making you uncomfortable." Dmitri turned to get up, but froze. He sat facing the middle of the room for a moment before turning around again so that he could lay next to Dedu. He even snuggled up against him and laid his head on him, closing his eyes. Not expecting this, Dedu nervously held his breath. After a bit, he slowly released his breath, putting a comforting arm around Dmitri and closing his eyes, already drifting off to sleep in the presence of the person he loved most. Dmitri was obviously denying something that he shouldn't be afraid to deny. He fell asleep fairly quickly, his eyes gently closed. Chapter 14, One of a Kind, Just Like You. Morning arrived. Since last night, the corrupt church soldiers were sent to the archbishop for a talking to, but they still hadn't caught the murderer. Everyone was gathered in the dining hall for breakfast. Ingrid and Dorothea were sharing a table with Annette and Mercedes at the time. There were a few things a lot of the students were talking about during breakfast. Of course, many of the students were talking about the murderer, but there was something else that was going to happen soon that they're all talking about. Casper led the way with Linhard to a table and sat down. They chose seats across from Ingrid and Dorothea. Casper had a big omelette that smelled like it was full of all sorts of stuff. Linhard had a plate of French toast sticks rolled in powdered sugar. Casper fist pumped. "Hey. So who's all excited about field day? That's coming up fast. I think I'm gonna sign up for the wrestling tournament. What events are you guys doing?" He looked at the table, then noticed Linhard nodding off and shook him. "Hey. Earth to Linhard, you gonna do an event?" Linhard opened his eyes and drowsily looked at Casper. Dorothea laughed. I don't know what I'm gonna sign up for," she thought to herself. Ingrid replied, "I'm going to do the javelin throw." Dorothea said, "Then I'll do that one as well. I'll be napping under a tree, I'm sure." "My event is sleeping," Linhard said. "Field day is a waste of time." Casper seemed offended. "No, it's not. It's my favorite day of the year. And you're gonna do an event. I'm signing you up for the 200m. Linhard shook his head, suddenly feeling more awake. "No. Don't make me do that. You think I'll be able to do that? Not with my sedentary lifestyle." Casper looked at Dorothea and Ingrid. "You guys are doing the javelin throw, huh? I'll bet quite a few of our classmates are good at that." "Ingrid, they serve an extra big meal that night so we can all refuel again. You excited for that?" He laughed. "Of course I am." Ingrid nodded. "Field day is gonna be so fun. You know, Linhard, if you don't participate, Seath is going to sign you up for a random event." "She's right," Casper said. "It's wrong to force someone into physical activity," Linhard said. "I'm just not well suited for it. I'd rather watch other people compete." "I'll be cheering you on, Casper, but nobody can make me participate." Casper shrugged. "Whatever. You'll end up doing something." He chomped his omelette and looked at Ingrid, his cheeks bulging. "You're lucky you have a friend who will actually do things with you. You don't even have to drag Dorothea to sports day. She wanted to do the javelin throw with you right away." Ingrid shrugged. "It's just because we have to participate. Plus it's fun," she added. Dorothea nodded. "Yeah, I don't want to do something alone. That wouldn't be any fun. You wouldn't be doing it alone. Everyone here is taking part. Which is why it would be strange not to participate." He looked at Linhard when he said not, then went back to eating. "I'd have to disagree on the fun part," Linhard commented. "Casper, you can do the event for me. But that's cheating. Really, I'd rather root for my best friend than waste my efforts. You do better when I'm cheering you on anyway." He stared down at his food. "All I really want is to see you succeed." Casper spoke with his mouth full. Well, that's nice, I guess. It didn't sound like he really took Linhardt's words to heart. Ingrid and Dorothea got awkward and quiet and kept eating their food silently. When Casper was finished, he pushed his plate a little bit and said, "Done. You don't have to announce when you're done with everything. You do that with your tests too, even after the professor explicitly says not to," Linhardt said. "Well, I'm done. And I got no time to wait for you. I gotta get to training if I wanna be in top shape for field day." He stood up. "Oh yeah. And leave your notes in my room so I can copy them. I have no idea what's going on in class." Later. He waved and ran away. Dorothea shook her head, leaning across the table towards Linhard. "How you're in love with that guy is beyond me," she said with a small chuckle, quiet enough so that Ingrid wouldn't hear her. Linhard was a bit worried Ingrid heard for a moment, but he realized she wasn't paying attention inside. He replied just as quietly with a shrug, "I've been asking myself the same question." He smiled a little, though. Dorothea stood up, finished with her food. "Well. Thank the both of you for eating with me. I have some things to get done, so I'll catch up with you soon." She waved and went to put her tray away. Ingrid did the same. "Have a good day, Dorothea. I'll see you around." He held up his hand to say goodbye, then pulled out a book and started reading while he finished his French toast. Classes that morning went normally, but there was a small break between classes. This break gave the students a moment to decompress and relax before attending their next lesson. Sylvain was in the gardens, standing across from some girl. "Yeah, well, I've got something for you. Close your eyes." The girl held out her hands and closed her eyes, and Sylvain placed a charm bracelet in her hands. It resembled the one he presented to Felix in the library, although the charms were different. She opened her eyes and was like, "Oh Sylvain, it's beautiful." Sylvain winked at her. "It's one of a kind, Caitlin, just like you." Caitlin giggled. "So? Where do you want to have our 2-month anniversary kiss?" "Maybe in the supply closet," Sylvain suggested. Caitlin nodded, "That's perfect." She sounded really excited, rushing off the other direction to prepare for later. Felix was right behind him. "Oh." He marched over to Sylvain and roughly grabbed his forearm with his nails. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" "Ow hey. Careful," Sylvain exclaimed, but went quiet and frowned when he noticed who grabbed him. "Felix. What are you doing here?" He looked around nervously, then set his eyes back on Felix. "I thought you'd be in the training area or something." "I was just gonna meet you there." He said it like a question. "Are you being serious right now?" he said, his face red with rage. "I can't believe you." He shoved Sylvain hard with 2 hands and started to exit the gardens. "Wait. Felix, I can explain." He chased after him. "I can explain, hold on." He accidentally trampled some flowers on his way to Felix. Felix turned around, and it looked like he had just wiped away a tear from his cheek. "What? What could you possibly have to explain?" His voice sounded emotional. "I don't know why I expected you to act differently. I'm a fool to have ever loved you." "Whoa, are you crying?" He looked shocked, obviously shocked to be seeing Felix shedding tears. "But, just come here." He pulled Felix aside into the nearby supply closet and closed the door. "First of all, ow. I did not know you had nails that sharp. Everything about you is sharp." He rubbed his arm. "But anyway. I've been going out with that girl for a while. Honestly, she's only in it for my crest. She thinks we're gonna get married, but we're not. I don't even like her that much anyway. But I have to make her think I like her cause her father will kill me if I reject her, see? At least, that's what she told me. It's all complicated crest stuff." "I don't give a fuck about your complicated crest stuff," he shouted. "What? I don't? You seriously can't tell why I'm upset? You said you could explain, and all that you've explained to me is that you don't even love me." I didn't say that." He held his hands up. "Why are you getting so angry?" Sylvain held his hands up. "When did I say that?" "Felix, I'm trying to explain this to you. I don't like that girl." I don't care about her nearly as much as I care about you. He still wasn't explaining himself well. She wrote to her father about me. And in turn, her father wrote to my father, and now I'm kind of in a situation. So I have to make it seem like I'm interested, get it? He suddenly looked extremely worried. You don't understand anything. How stupid can you be? Felix snapped. There's something seriously wrong with your head. I confessed all of my feelings to you. Everything. I regret every second I've spent with you in the past weeks. He spat. Well, I don't, Sylvain replied, clenching his fists. I don't think you understand anything. Because you know what? I don't like any of those girls. None. He moved his arm sharply, accidentally knocking something over. And if you paid attention to anything I just said, or looked back on the last week we've spent together, you'd know that. Felix looked up at him and got quiet. He took a deep breath, and wiped his face quickly with his sleeve, listening. Sylvain let out a big sigh. You know this about me, but I'll say it again, for the 1000th time, it's always ever been about my stupid crest. My family needs the Gautier bloodline to continue, and the pressure's on me. He frowned, looking down. But with you, there's no pressure, he looked back at Felix. I'm actually happy to be with you, but, if my family found out, I don't know what they'd do, he nervously wrung his hands. What if they found out about us and... I don't know, did something bad to me? Or you, but, there's so much at stake, Felix. So much. Sylvain. Felix frowned. I just couldn't handle you giving someone else affection. He didn't want to apologize though. I hate to say it, but I understand. You've been put through a lot. But nothing bad can happen to you as long as I'm here. Yeah. I have. We both have. I could go on, but... I really don't want to get into all of that right now. Sylvain leaned back against the wall. So, just know that if I have to put on an act to make things seem normal, it's not because I don't like you, okay? He met Felix's eyes through the dim lighting of the closet. It's quite the opposite, really. The more flirtatious I am, the less suspicious people will become. Okay. It's been tough keeping us a secret, he said. I think most people kinda know already. I don't think I wanna go around telling everyone that we're like, together, you know? I can't afford to have that news going around. And I just explained to you why. He paused. There are so many rumors about me, though, that not everyone knows what to believe. People might just think what's going on with us is a stupid rumor, you know. Yeah, just some stupid rumor, he said quietly, looking off to the side. You know, it's gonna be really hard seeing you with other girls. I just hope you're not lying to me as an excuse to cheat. Lying? To you? Felix, if I lied to you or cheated on you, you'd probably cut my head off or something. He reached out and tilted Felix's head with his hand so that they were looking at each other again. I'll always come back to you, though. And you'd be right. He said in reply to his first statement, gazing at him lovingly. Just, try not to get too touchy with them. Please. I'll try, Sylvain said. Just know that when I'm with them, I'm always wishing I'm with you. He gently swiped his thumb across Felix's cheek to wipe away one of his tears. No, you shouldn't have to try, you will, he demanded. I don't want to be controlling, but you must understand to some extent. He grabbed Sylvain's hand when he touched his cheek. Right, yes. I understand. I promise. He gravitated closer to Felix. So, crisis averted? Can we just say this was a big misunderstanding and make out now? He raised his eyebrows. If this happens again, I won't let you off the hook so easily, Felix said. But for now you're forgiven. He grabbed Sylvain's collar and pulled him down to his height and kissed him. Sylvain was very stupid. He kissed Felix but forgot where they were. After a little while, there was a quiet voice from outside the door asking if Sylvain was in there. He gasped and stopped kissing Felix. Oops. He kept his voice low. I was supposed to kiss someone else in here. Felix narrowed his eyes. Nice one, he sneered. Well, good luck with that. Meet me at lunch afterwards. Felix pushed away from Sylvain and opened the door. He made eye contact as he walked past the girl, wiping the corner of his mouth with his thumb as he did so. Wait, you can't leave because she's going to dash. Sylvain had to stop talking because the door was open, but instead he just let out a sigh. The girl outside was very confused as Felix walked out, but she entered the closet anyway. Sylvain was late to lunch afterwards. He arrived about 45 minutes past what he should have, and he had a bunch of lipstick smudged on his face and the collar of his shirt. He sat across from Felix but didn't say anything. Felix looked up at Sylvain, holding his fork in place halfway to his mouth, slack-jawed. He stared for a while before taking a deep breath and slamming his fork down. Get out of my face. Sylvain put his hands on the back of his head and then laid his face down on the table. You ugh. Felix. Again, you don't get it. He lifted his head up. I had to prove that nothing was going on between us in there. He leaned forward as he said that and kept his volume low. I barely even kissed her back cause I was still thinking about kissing you. Sylvain, it's so incredibly hard for me to look at you right now and believe a word that you're saying. I care dash. He paused to lower his voice. I care about you too much to think about it. He said with a small sigh. You're so worried about someone finding out. Goddess forbid they find out that someone has the heart to actually like me. No. It's not that. He started frantically rubbing off the lipstick from wherever he could. He used his hands, although it probably would have been easier with a napkin. It's not you I'm afraid of them finding out about, it's more complicated than that. He made sure nobody could hear them talking. I care about you so much that I'm willing to do things I hate just to keep us together. Yes, Felix, I kissed that girl and hated every second of it. Well, it was a little more than kissing, but you know. Never mind that though. The point is, I'm creating an infallible cover. Got it? You what? Sylvain, he held his head in his hands for a moment. Why do we need to listen to what anybody wants? Honestly, why? Because it could be life or death for me, okay? He pounded the table with his fist, and stood up, but then noticed people were staring, so he lowered back down. You remember Miklon, I'm sure? Or at least, you remember of him. He took a deep breath. Well, he's always wanted me dead. All because I had something he didn't. I'm not about to go against my family's wishes after all I've gone through with that, okay? He paused. Before you tell me this has nothing to do with that, you're wrong. I'm under so much pressure to be exactly what my family wants. Whether I follow my own heart or the will of others, my life is at stake. It's just a matter of picking which risk I want to take. Sylvain, you don't have to worry about anything like that while you're with me, he said. And I think on some level, you know that. I'm not about to let anything happen to you. Because if you go, so do I. We promised, remember? Sylvain frowned and looked down at the table. Of course I remember. He paused, then grabbed his hand from across the table without thinking. Why do you care about me so much? Why you can't just ask me that, he stuttered. I don't know. Growing up with you, and then after Glenn he stopped to take a breath. We stopped seeing each other. And after Glenn it was hard for me to function without you at my side. It was abnormal. He continued, you're brave always throwing yourself in front of enemies for me, you're hot, you're handsome. Very handsome. I could go on and on. Felix seemed extremely uncomfortable to be sharing his feelings this way. Sylvain listened to what Felix had to say, furrowing his brow. He looked sincere when Felix was talking about Glenn, but then cracked a smile when Felix told him he was hot by accident. Well, I guess there's no need to go on after that. He seemed to relax a little bit, gently smoothing his thumb over the back of Felix's hand. But what you said before that means a lot. It really does. So, thank you. Don't mention it. I would do almost anything for you, Felix added, squeezing his hand. He used his free hand to take a bite of food. And I meant every word. Sylvain smiled a little to himself. Well, I really wish I could kiss you right now, he said, leaning his cheek against his free hand. But I don't know if this is the right time or place. Leonie walked over to them. What are you doing? She looked at their hands. Quickly, Sylvain pulled his hand away. Oh. I was just teaching my pal here how to hold a girl's hand. The right way. There is a right way, you know. It takes practice. Leonie gave them a strange look. Okay. Felix didn't answer her. He pulled his hand back quickly and accidentally flung his fork onto the floor. He picked it up, avoiding eye contact with her. You guys are being weird, Leonie said after Felix flung his fork onto the floor. Anyway. I gotta go find Captain Geralt. Sorry for interrupting the lesson. She walked away. Sylvain watched her leave, then looked at Felix. Okay, she's the weird one. Do you agree? Yeah, she's kinda pretty I guess, but she's being weird. I'm leaving. Felix said, standing up. He pushed his tray towards Sylvain. That last comment was unnecessary. You clean up my tray for me. What? Why oh come on, Felix, old habits die hard. He started cleaning up Felix's tray for him. Really? It just slipped out. He stood up as well. You're real cutting it close today, he said, pointing at him. I need you to fix your habits if you're going to be with me, he demanded. Okay. I'll work on it. I promise, he said, but don't expect me to change overnight. I've got years of bad habits to undo. How selfish can you be? Felix mumbled, narrowing his eyes. He turned on his heel and started marching out of the mess hall. And here we go again. Sylvain sighed and slumped forward onto the table. He didn't realize it, but his sleeve got some sort of dressing all over it. He only realized when he lifted his head. I deserved that. Chapter 15, The Importance of Friendship. The next day, Seath dealt with the corrupt guards. It was not publicly disclosed on how it happened, but the guards were never seen again. Claude and Hilda had just finished eating, and they were outside on the bridge near the church, talking with one another about the upcoming field day that the school was hosting. Monica approached Claude and Hilda. She was holding a bundle of books under her arm. Hello. If you have a moment, I found out some critical information. About the night killer, I mean. Oh? You did? Claude folded his arms. I'm not the person you should be reporting to, he said, pointing to himself. Seath and Lady Rhea are the ones who need to hear about this. Rhea is right in there. He pointed at the chapel. Oh, right. Sorry. Lady Edelgard is busy at the moment and I didn't want to so rudely interrupt. She explained. I guess I'm a little nervous to speak with them. It's the Archbishop and her assistant. It's a bit intimidating, approaching them. As she struggled to carry all of her books, something fell out. It was a little clear jar, which she swiped up before anyone else could get a hold of it. Claude gave Hilda a suspicious look before turning back towards Monica. Don't worry, you'll be fine. I mean, I never really do it, but they're not gonna eat you or anything, he laughed. Eat me? That's stupid. Not even a funny joke. She made sure her bag was clasped shut as tight as it could fasten. Anyway, you're a house leader, so I may as well let you know. This killer is traveling back and forth between the monastery and some strange tunnels that lead under it. They have purple hair, I think. That's all I saw. Oh, and this dash. She took a piece of ripped cloth out of her pocket that had part of the Ashen Wolves logo on it. I found it near the well where Ash was attacked. Seriously? Yuri? No way he's the killer. Go report this to Edelgard immediately after she's finished with whatever royal business she's attending to, he instructed. Hilda, come with me. He began walking towards the chapel. Hilda followed him close behind, shooting a few nervous glances at Monica as she scampered away. Yes, of course, she replied. Be careful. She started walking away to write down a detailed report for Edelgard to read later. Hilda and Claude ended up going to Rhea and reporting everything to her. A while passed, and the church decided to wait until further action to deal with the evidence, just in case they didn't want to accuse the wrong person, just in case the situation was similar to what had just happened with Didu. A few days later, Dmitri was walking through the marketplace. He made sure nobody was following him before heading out of the monastery. Claude happened to notice Dmitri just as he tried to slip away. He silently followed after him, hiding behind walls or trees if he thought he might be caught. Dmitri ventured further, passing through town and approaching the woods. Once he was past the tree line, he stooped down, examining something on the forest floor. He unearthed a small strip of black cloth with an unidentified symbol etched into it. He examined it, but couldn't figure out what the symbol meant. He wondered if it may have been a crest, and decided it would be best to bring it back to Professor Hanneman to analyze. He turned around to report his findings, but suddenly stopped, clutching his chest. He broke out into a cold sweat, unable to take his eyes away from a spot on the ground. His breathing quickened, and he backed into a tree, muttering something fearful under his breath. Claude narrowed his eyes as he watched Dmitri. He couldn't understand what Dmitri was so paranoid about, but he had noticed that his friend was more fidgety than normal lately. He walked out from behind the tree to reveal himself. "Hey Dmitri." He folded his arms. "You're really down bad, huh?" Dmitri jumped at the sound of Claude's voice, snapping out of his trance-like state. "What dash? Claude. What are you doing here? I saw you acting all sketchy, so obviously I followed you," he said. "You okay?" Dmitri frowned, walking over to a fallen tree trunk. He sat on it and looked at the ground, then back at Claude. "So you saw?" "Yeah. I did. I could tell something has been going on with you. Is this about Didu? Or something worse?" Claude asked. Dmitri wiped the sweat from the nape of his neck with his hand, then hung his head. "This is not about Didu. I don't know what to do." "It's okay," Claude said, slinging his arm around his friend's shoulders. "I understand, so this is about the tragedy? There's no need to go through this alone. I hope you know that. My delusions are worsening, my head aches all the time and I can't stop thinking about that day." He ran his hands through his hair before letting his arms drop. "I've been having nightmares every night. I just want my suffering to end." He massaged his temples with his thumbs. "Dmitri," Claude frowned. He really wasn't sure how to help him with something as disturbing as this. "Why don't you spend more time with those you care about? Less time by yourself, maybe? I've seen you hanging around all by your lonesome quite frequently." Dmitri was quiet for a while, but he definitely valued Claude's suggestion. "Didu," he said, looking straight ahead. Didu? But I thought," he trailed off a bit. "Dmitri, just do whatever you need to do. But don't resort to anything weird, like traveling to the middle of the forest with nobody to help you if something were to go wrong." No. I gave it some more thought," he sighed. "The only time I feel good is when I'm with Didu." He paused. "I think almost losing him made me realize that." He looked at Claude. "I won't do anything rash. I need help. And I don't want anybody to know that I'm not doing okay. Hey, I won't tell anyone. You know I won't." He pulled him into a tight hug. "Just take time to heal. You are more important than anything else, so focus on you." "All right." He hugged Claude back tightly as well, closing his eyes for a moment. If Claude's welcoming touch was able to grant him even a moment of sanity, he would take it. "How am I supposed to be a good king if I can't even hold myself together?" he asked. "I am going to fail miserably, really. If I can't take care of myself, then how can I take care of an entire kingdom?" He backed out of the hug. "I don't want my people to look at their king and see this side of me. Nobody will care, even so. You're too loved for people to look down on you. Come, let's head back to the monastery, okay?" "I'm too loved? What are you suggesting?" "That no matter what, the people are going to side with me due to my charm despite all else." He stood up with Claude and started walking back. "What if I lose my—" He was cut off as someone darted out of cover. They ran toward him with a blade outstretched, but Dmitri dodged just in time, pulling Claude along with him. "An assassin!" he exclaimed, pulling out a small knife. It was the only weapon he had on him. "Bold of them to take on the both of us." The assassin threw a dagger, which grazed Dmitri's shoulder. He winced, but counterattacked. He nicked the assassin's arm pretty good. Claude didn't have anything on him besides a flash grenade. "Sorry Dimitri, I wasn't prepared for a fight," he said, turning to face the assassin. "Clearly, I wasn't either. We have to find a way to whoa." He jumped sideways to evade the assassin's blade. After hearing that he wasn't prepared, the assassin charged at Claude. Dimitri ran behind him and grabbed the back of his hood, yanking on it so he couldn't do anything to hurt Claude. As he pulled on the hood, he noticed that the imperial coat of arms was stitched into the hood of the assassin's uniform. "What in the—" "Claude. This soldier is from the Empire. A member of the Imperial Army." Claude grabbed his flash bomb and closed his eyes. "Look out Dimitri." He tossed it. When Claude threw the flash bomb, Dimitri released the soldier, running behind a tree to shield his eyes. He waited until the flash went off before uncovering his eyes. The Imperial soldier was blinded and cried out in pain. Something overcame Dimitri and he charged at the soldier, tackling him. He took his dagger and stabbed him multiple times in the back, letting out a fierce grunt every time. When he was done, he dropped the dagger and moved off of the soldier, letting out a few deep breaths. He looked at Claude. Claude took deep breaths, staring at Dimitri with his mouth open slightly. He trailed off. He swallowed hard and took a small step back. He had never seen Dimitri act this way before. Something inside of him told him to run, to get away from Dimitri and never go near him again. But he couldn't. He just couldn't. He composed himself, his demeanor returning to normal. "That was rather rewarding," he muttered, then brushed himself off. He stood up, cleaning his dagger off on his cloak. "I feel a little better." He paused for a while, knowing our attacker can do no more harm, that is. "You just, okay then." Claude released a deep breath. He wasn't sure if he was holding it from fear or relief. "Come on. Let's get him back to the monastery then." He said it more as a question than anything. "Well, shouldn't we take him?" He pointed at the dead Imperial assassin with his dagger, then sheathed it. He picked the guy up by the arms. "Lift the legs." Claude was silent as the two of them dragged the Imperial soldier back to the monastery. After they dragged him back, Seath was the first to see. "What in the name of Sam Hill is that?" he exclaimed. Dimitri set the soldier down. "He attacked us outside of the monastery. He's from the Imperial Army. Look." He showed Seath his clothing. "We took care of him before we could sustain any serious injuries. Let me discuss the matter with Lady Rhea. I want you two to reflect on what happened. Be prepared to get called to my office sometime during the day to answer questions." He walked off. "Reflect? We didn't even do anything wrong," Claude exclaimed as they exited. "We were only protecting ourselves." "Geez Dimitri, you were kinda scary back there," he admitted, once Seath had walked away. "Scary? How so?" "I was only protecting you. And the people at Gareg Mach. If that assassin got away, the lives of many could have been at stake." "That's true, but I don't know." Claude paused. "Forget it. There's a chance I'll see you later in Seath's office." He waved and headed off to his room. Even though he said he didn't want to, he really needed to reflect on the events he had just seen. "Please be cautious for the rest of the day, Claude. I mean it. If you notice anything suspicious, don't let it go unnoticed." Dimitri watched him head off, then sighed as he turned around to go the other way, hoping he would have a chance to calm down somehow. Ash came down to the dining hall on crutches, looking like he was having a little trouble navigating through all of the people and tables while bringing his tray. "Oh dear. Ash." Mercedes hurried over and grabbed the tray from him, eyeing his crutches. "I take it that even healing magic wasn't enough to heal your leg? I'm so sorry." "Oh, thank you Mercedes." He smiled, letting her take the tray. "It's very kind of you to help." He hobbled over to the spot he had his eye on, then carefully sat down. "Apparently not. You see, the scrap of metal did some nerve damage to my leg. It's going to take a while before I can walk on it again." "Well, walk on it properly, at least." "Oh my, that's just awful," she said, setting his tray down for him, then sitting down. Annette sat down across from them, silently. She wasn't very talkative this supper. Mercedes asked Ash, "How long until you can walk again?" "I don't know," Ash said, "a few weeks, maybe? The damage is bad, the medics said my leg may never function normally again." He frowned and looked down at his plate. "Things would have been much worse if it weren't for you though, Mercedes. So thank you." He looked up, trying to be optimistic. "Of course, Ash. I'm so happy I was able to help you." "It was really scary," she said before eating a scoop of black beans. He then looked at Annette. "Not to pry, but I've usually heard you cheerfully singing by this point. I do hope it isn't my negativity bringing you down." Annette sighed. "Sorry, Ash. I'm just not feeling it today. I promise it has nothing to do with you." "Oh, well, I'm sorry, Annette. Really, it's not normal to see you acting so glum. Is there anything I can do to brighten your evening?" He dug in his pocket, then pulled out a sucker. "Wanna figure out how many licks it takes to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?" He chuckled. "I've done that already," she said, mushing her food around her plate. "It's just Felix broke up with me today." Ash frowned, pausing his meal. "Oh, Annette, I'm so sorry to hear that." He gave her the Tootsie Pop as a sort of feel-better gift. "I'm sure this has been emotionally hard on you. I can't imagine what that's like." He didn't care about his leg troubles, he just wanted his friend to feel better. "It's just, everything seemed fine between us. I think. Ugh, I don't know the first thing about a good relationship." Mercedes chuckled. "Well, on the bright side, now we'll be able to spend more time together. And I'll be there for you too, Annette. I promise. I'll be a good, supportive friend." "I'm sure this is what Lug would have done if his friend was going through a breakup," Ash said. "Oh, it probably is," Annette said with a small nod, "and you're just like him." She complimented him. "Oh, really? You think so?" Ash got so happy and excited that he felt it rising up. Oh, it was so exciting. "Thank you." This made Annette giggle. "Of course, Ash. It's true." She started actually eating her meal, beginning to forget about Felix. Check the description for the links to the author.